broadcasting around the world 24 hours a day. This is Carers World Radio with Patricia Mitchell.
Hello and welcome. Now in this month's programme we look back on the Carers Summit, which took place in November in London. We also learn about a new study of young carers which is about to get underway between the Princess Royal Trust for Carers and the Mental Health Foundation. Plus, we'll be talking to Matt Hill from Carers UK, who will be on the programme spreading Christmas good cheer with the government announcement of a £60 Christmas bonus for some carers. But first, a groundbreaking legal decision took place in the European Court in July, which will now have implications for the thousands of carers who try to juggle work and care across the United Kingdom. Sharon Coleman's story began when her son Oliver was born with several disabilities. When Oliver was about 2.5, following another operation, he suffered a severe chest infection and was unable to toddle even a small distance. The childminder had to do the school run, but was scared to take Oliver in the car as car journeys made him sleep and his breathing became more erratic when he slept. This disrupted Sharon's carefully worked out routine. Now, Sharon asked if she could come in a little later to work by about 5 minutes or so. She was told if she was late, she would be sacked. When Oliver had another operation, Sharon had to use annual leave so she could look after him. Yet, when another colleague's son had his tonsils out, that person was allowed to work from home for 3 weeks, something that had been denied to Sharon. Sharon applied for flexible working so she could better look after Oliver, for example, by working at home sometimes, as other members of staff were able to do. But simply asking for it seemed to make matters worse. The stress of all this was having a bad effect on Sharon. She would get home and break down crying. She began to feel inadequate as an employee and as a mother. The final straw at work came when all employees were told the firm had to make one secretary redundant. Sharon felt the redundancy process was a farce. Sharon felt forced into taking redundancy and emailed a partner of the firm who promptly told her she could go by Friday. One of Sharon's friends felt she had a case for constructive dismissal, where someone is forced out of a job rather than sacked. She put her in contact with a solicitor who agreed she had a case for constructive dismissal. However, she also suggested they could go for an unproven legal point that Sharon had suffered discrimination on the grounds of disability by association. Sharon's case went to a tribunal who referred it to the European Court of Justice. Now, at the end of January, the Advocate General gave a favourable opinion of the case, and in July, the European Court ruled in her favour, with huge legal implications for the status of all carers. In August, I spoke to Luke Clements, who is a leading authority on community law. He's a reader of law at Cardiff Law School at the University of Wales and a member of the Law Society's Mental Health and Disability Committee. Luke is also the legal advisor to Carers UK. I began by asking him how significant he thought the Sharon Coleman case was.
Oh, I think it is very significant. We've been arguing that carers should have the same rights of protection against discrimination as other groups, disabled people particularly, for some time, but the government has been very resistant. We proposed to do this in the Carers Equal Opportunities Act, but the government resisted that and said no. Now it has happened effectively, and so I suppose it's 5 years before we thought it would happen, so it's excellent news.
And it's obviously come through on the premise of this discrimination on the grounds of disability by association, which is interesting. How do you now think the law is going to change in order, if you like, to cater for this judgment?
Well, I'm not sure in the short term it's going to have to change very much. The government has already required employers to have flexible working rights for carers and under the Work and Families Act 2006, which means that a carer, if they need to have reasonable adjustments effectively made by their employer, which would be the language of the Disability Discrimination Act. If they want to have some flexibility in their working, they can ask the employer, and the employer really has to give very cogent reasons for refusing that. Now, we don't really have to play that game. The employer's got to make reasonable adjustments for a carer if the carer is being sort of handicapped effectively by their caring responsibilities.
Well, Luke was correct, as in November an employment tribunal in London ruled that protection for carers against discrimination by association with disability can be given under existing UK law, paving the way for carers to make immediate claims against their employers if they are treated unfairly. If new legislation was required, it would have meant that protection was only available from the future point at which the new law was brought into force, and all current claims, such as Sharon's, would have been dropped. Sharon Coleman's case can now proceed to a full hearing, where the facts of the case will be considered. In November, Chancellor Alistair Darling announced that all carers who are entitled to carers allowance will receive an additional payment of £60. Now, this is on top of the usual £10 Christmas bonus which they will receive. Now, to find out if you can get the payment, we've been on the line with Matt Hill. He's with us now. He's Communications and Campaigns Manager at Carers UK. Welcome, Matt. Is
Hello.
This good news, or is this just the tip of the iceberg?
Well, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. It's both. It's great news. We're really pleased that the Chancellor has made some recognition of carers and said, look, here's an extra £60 for those who are getting carers allowance. Of course it's welcome, but, you know, £60, that's all right for that week, but what about the other 51 weeks of the year? There's so much that needs to be done for carers' benefits, and the credit crunch is hitting carers harder than most. You know, we've done some research recently that shows half of carers are cutting back on food. About 3/4 are struggling to pay their utility bills. And so, you know, their financial position is much worse than it was even 12 months ago. And the government have got to act. The £60 is really welcome.
Well, that wraps it up from us for today. Now, don't forget, you can go to our website at www.carersworldradio.com. That's www.carersworldradio.com to take part in our surveys, listen to our programs, and much, much more. You can also email us at production@carersworldradio.com. That's production@carersworldradio.com, or fill in our contact form on our contacts page. But until next month, goodbye.